My most haunted funeral home experience. Everything I'm about to share is extremely true as I experienced it. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. We're always talking about spooky, weird stuff. I lived above a funeral home. A lot of people do live above funeral homes because funeral home. There's something endearing about a family that has devoted their lives to a community and have kept this building up, right? It's arguably some Victorian building. Now you have a lot more modern locations being built, and not like this one. This one was built in 1860. It is sprawling over a city block, parking on both the north and south sides. And over time, the main building, the center, the heart of that was built in 1860, slowly expanded north first. There was a house next door to the funeral home that was purchased in 1966 and slowly added on. And then the south side, there was a house right next door. After the chapel extended, was added on 1971. Nonetheless, the story is as follows. It is true. There have been tons of stories. Have you ever walked into a place where there are people and you felt comfortable, like you're asked to be a plus one at a party, like an upcoming Super Bowl, and you're like, sure, I'll go, and everyone there is welcoming and you feel appreciated? And then you have the places that you go where you're like, I want to get the hell out of here. You as a person have this understanding of what feels good and safe and not. And that's the same with death. Think about the thousands of loved ones that have come through this funeral home particularly, and then all the locations across the country. This was built in 1860. Above the main floor is a residence. Now is offices, but sprawling ceilings. Everything is beautiful. And it was an apartment. It was beautiful. And I recall a time where I was painting the sunroom as a gift. I was painting the sunroom, this beautiful color, and I spent the first few days doing it on my own. I had help one of the nights, and then the last night, again, every time by myself, this occurred. Now, the dogs, there were two Maltipoos, and it was not uncommon for this dog, one in particular, to go and stand in the corner and just kind of stare. And you wonder, what the hell's going on? You hear things all the time below because there's visitations going on. It wasn't uncommon for people to just wander. It's amazing how people wander all over the funeral home, nonstop, all hours of the day, afternoon. If the door's locked, don't try to get in. Nonetheless, I'm painting in these particular evenings by myself, and it never failed, whether it was 10 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night. It sounded as if there were kids. Now, I hear this ball bouncing, and I'm like, what in the hell is going on down there? There was not a visitation, and it was about 10:15 in the evening. I was pretty uneasy because I hear giggles, laughing, chasing, little footsteps running downstairs. Now, above the funeral home, picture a building this big on the main floor, and then the upstairs, just a square. So this square is the apartment. Directly below that square, picture another square that you can run in a square below. There's also two bathrooms within that square that you could pass through, set of doors on this side and go through this way. Same for the female, the women's go in and out. Hopefully that paints the picture. So I'm hearing these children laughing, bouncing a ball. I hear running around below me. I didn't feel scared so much as I thought I was going nuts. Now, there's also a main stairwell to go up. That's a beautiful staircase. And then there's a staircase in the back and private entry, if you will, where it's not as easily seen, and it's you go up, hit a landing, and go up again. And it got to the point where the noise of the kids running in a square opening the door to the bathroom, and it had a certain squeak to it. One of which was a heavier push. The women's, well, I keep saying that. The women's restroom, you had to push a little harder. You could hear that, and then the steps were going up the back staircase. They got to the landing. They stopped, and then they went darting back down. Giggles along the way. I'm painting in the front sunroom. It's nighttime. I'm freaked out at this point. I don't want to go down. I don't go down. That happens for about 30 to 45 minutes. And then the next day, my mother comes by because I want to show her the paint that I had picked out and what we had done over the course of 3.5 days. And as she comes over, my mother, this devout Catholic, she doesn't necessarily believe or not believe, and I'm telling her, and she's like, oh, that's silly, you know, we're just looking around the room, and she said, this is really nice. And I finished the story. We go to leave, and you have to walk down the hall, past the kitchen, past the bathroom, to the back door, which leads to the back stairwell, because I'm going to walk my mother out, because of course down the stairs and out the door in a parking lot is where the driveway is. It's a parking lot. You go into a public building, then you go up to a private residence. So I'm going to walk her out. We walk out the back door of the apartment to go down the stairs toward the landing, and sure as shit, the kids start playing and laughing and running. Now, we hadn't gotten down from this landing to go down the final set of stairs, and she hears the noise that I was explaining. She turns at me really fast, and I'm above her on the landing. She might be 1 or 2 steps down. She goes, you're scared. I know you're scared. You're scared. Let's go back upstairs. We'll go upstairs and hang out for a little bit. So we go back upstairs, and Mother and I are staring at each other like, I told you. I told you so. After saying that, there wasn't much more conversation. The noises subsided, and I walked her out the back door, and I hadn't heard it again for some time. It's funny because I told my mother. It happened to me. I told my mother. My mother didn't believe me, and then sure enough, it was like, hey, we'll show you. And there are many other stories that happened while living at the funeral home. Things that we can't explain, noises, phone calls. It doesn't make sense. But it corroborates with other stories, or it is corroborated with other stories from other people who lived at funeral homes who had things similar happen to them on a consistent basis. So you can't just be making it up and think that, oh, wow, that's interesting. Because when you finally get the nerve to tell the story, you're like, hey, this kind of happened. And they're like, holy crap, that happened. I never told anybody. So there's not playing off of one another. It's interesting. If you like this, let me know in the comments below, and now we can keep the conversations going, whether it be my story or stories that I've heard from others individually. Be sure to subscribe and click that bell to be notified when I release content exclusive here. Funeral profession is a beautiful profession. It has inspired tons of my songs that are streaming on all the platforms, which you can find me on TikTok and Insta and all of them. Thanks for all the support and streaming. Follow my podcast, You'll Die Trying, and let's talk more spooky. Those kids, they were having a blast. Now me? I wasn't. All right. Spooks to be continued.